Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. Tonight's commentary is about Juz 15, and I picked a verse that I believe truly embodies the essence of Ramadan. Because Ramadan is not just an obedience test, that of course is an important part of it, that we obey the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is meant to make a lasting impression on our psyche, to help us change our orientation to the proper orientation that is desired of us by our Creator in this life. And I think that this verse really captures the spirit of what it is that we are trying to achieve in this month, not just for the 30 days or the 29 days that we're fasting, but to try to nudge ourselves over to have a new perspective and a new attitude. And the verse is verse 28 from Surah Al-Kahf. And we'll go through the Arabic and read the translation and then kind of enhance the translation a little bit. So the verse says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه ولا تعد عيناك عنهم تريد زينة الحياة الدنيا ولا تطع من أغفلنا قلبه عن ذكرنا واتبع هواه وكان أمره فرطا. And so this is an instruction to the believer. واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه, and contain thyself in patience. I think an easier translation is hold yourself patiently with all of those who in the morning and the evening are remembering their Lord, seeking his countenance, meaning seeking his pleasure, seeking to fulfill the purpose for which we were created. So the instruction is hold yourself patiently with the people who are living their life in this way. So point number one, the Quran is acknowledging that living this kind of righteous, pious life is not easy. It requires patience and perseverance. It may not be our first instinct. And so we're told, yes, we know you might want to do one thing, but instead hold yourself patiently by the side of those who spend their mornings and their evenings seeking God's countenance. وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. And don't let your eyes go beyond them in the quest of the glitter of this worldly life. So this is what we're going to want to do. Let our eyes go beyond those people that are trying to live their pious and decent life and seek instead the glitter and the pomp and the beauty and the pleasure of this worldly life. So we're asked not to do that, to be patient, to hold on, because there's something bigger going on with this world than just seeking the immediate pleasures. And of course, that's what we're practicing during Ramadan. We are avoiding food, we're avoiding drink, married people are avoiding marital relations, we are holding ourselves from anger, from backbiting, from lying. We are trying to give of the wealth and the money that we love. We are giving up our sleep to spend the nights in prayer. And all of this is to foster in us this capacity to look at the glitter of this world and say, you know what? I'm going to let this go. I'm going to strive for something else. And how do we achieve this attitude? وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. And do not obey, do not be influenced by, do not be swayed by, don't let this person dictate to you how to behave or how to think. Who is this person? The one whose heart has been rendered heedless of all remembrance of us. Us here being the divine us, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do not obey the one who has forgotten the remembrance of God. And we don't here mean a single person, some individual telling you do this or do that. This could very well apply to society as a whole, to societal trends, to the cultural mores, to the prevalent attitudes that may tell us, oh, go ahead, just seek happiness. You deserve to be happy. You want to have pleasure, and why not? And when that is what our culture keeps telling us, that has become heedless of the fact that having pleasure is not a moral imperative. Our society, our culture sometimes elevates what we desire to be a moral imperative. Oh, yes, we want that, so we should have it. Why not? This is how I feel. This is what I want. Let me go get it. But when people do that, are they remembering why they have been created? Or have their hearts become heedless of the remembrance of God? وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ. He has become heedless of the remembrance of God, and instead he follows his desires. He doesn't stop to ask, and by he I don't mean again a single person. It could be an entire culture, a group of friends, a group of peers, uh, celebrities that you look up to. Whatever it is, they are instead following their desires. وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. And here the translation is abandoning all that is good and true. I think, and God knows best, that a better translation of furuta comes from the root word here in Arabic, which is farat. And al-farat is excess, extravagance, going over the top, that you want so much to follow your desires that you just become excessive in the attachment to this life. And if I were to pick one verse that to me, and again, God knows best, symbolizes what it is that I am trying to achieve with the fasting of the month of Ramadan, it is this verse trying to foster in myself this attitude. And I'm not trying in any way, astaghfirullah, to imply that I have been successful, but it's now, Juz 15. So we're right in the middle. We're in the thick of it, and we're trying, and inshallah, God will bless us. And the question then becomes, okay, how do I bring myself to this mentality? How can I help myself to start to think this way? And I think that those answers are just a few verses later in Surah Al-Kahf. So in the last verse, we saw that the Quran is telling us that there are two types of people, or two types of attitudes, or two types of approaches. One is seeking the glitter, the pomp, the glamour, or simply the pleasure of this life by following our desires. What will make us happy, we do it. The second attitude is that we have been created for a purpose, to seek God's countenance, and to live this life with that goal in mind. And the Quran is telling us that it is understood that the first attitude, we all want to follow our desires. We all want the pleasure of this life. That first attitude is alluring. It's going to tempt us. That is acknowledged. But instead, we're asked to be patient, to hold ourselves patiently with those who adopt the attitude of seeking God's countenance. Now, how do we find the strength to do that? It is by recognizing the reality that is put forth in verse 45 and verse 46 of Surah Al-Kahf. And so verse 45 says, وَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Propound to them the parable of life in this world. Give them this parable to let them know what this life is really like. كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا. That this life is like water that we send down from the skies, which mixes with the plants of the earth. And of course, those plants become very beautiful. Other verses in the Quran talk about that. And they represent the allurement of this life. But in time, they will turn to dry stubble, which the winds blow freely about. And so, this life will be a temporary bloom. But soon, that bloom will fade, and those plants will wither and turn into stubble and break up and be blown by the wind. Basically, that this life, while attractive and alluring, is temporary. And it is God who determines all things. He has the power to determine and set the measure. And again, المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا. That wealth and children are an adornment of this world's life. They represent the alluring things, the things that we would desire. والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. But the good deeds that have everlasting enduring fruit, not like the bloom that will fade, but the righteous life and the good deeds, they will bear a fruit that will endure forever, and they are of far greater merit in thy sustainer sight and a far better source of hope. They are a far better thing to long for than living a life governed by our desires, seeking the temporary, albeit beautiful, but temporary bloom of this world. Instead, the everlasting fruits of the righteous life are what we should long for and pin our hopes for. And that, of course, is the point of fasting. It is to train us to these perspectives so that, inshallah, we can do our best to join the company of the righteous. I say what I've said. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me and to forgive you and to make us successful in our quest this Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.